The Haunting of Hollow Manor. The night was cold and damp, the fog a shroud that enveloped Hollow Manor, a decrepit Victorian mansion that stood in eerie silence. Sarah, a skeptical paranormal investigator with a keen eye for debunking ghostly tales, found herself at the foot of the grand, but dilapidated, entrance. The stories she'd heard of this place had chilled her to the bone, and yet she couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. As Sarah stepped inside the mansion, a gust of chilly wind brushed against her cheek, sending shivers down her spine. The dimly lit corridor seemed to stretch endlessly before her. The walls, adorned with faded wallpaper that had once been vibrant, whispered of a time long past. The air was heavy with history, and Sarah could feel the weight of forgotten memories pressing down on her. With every step, the wooden floorboards creaked beneath her. She couldn't help but wonder what secrets they held, what stories they longed to share. It was in these moments of uncertainty that Sarah questioned the wisdom of her decision. But she had a reputation to uphold, and this place was a challenge she couldn't refuse. As she made her way deeper into the mansion, the atmosphere grew more oppressive. Shadows danced on the walls, casting eerie shapes that seemed to move of their own accord. Her heart raced, and her skepticism wavered. Perhaps there was some truth to the tales of hauntings after all. Sarah finally reached the heart of Hollow Manor, a room that was said to be the epicenter of the supernatural occurrences. The room was adorned with tattered draperies that swayed gently in the chill of the night, though no breeze stirred them. The atmosphere here was heavy, charged with an energy that sent shivers through her. In the center of the room, she set up a small table and arranged a séance. Candles flickered, casting an eerie glow across the room as she began to summon any spirits that might be present. She had conducted countless séances in the past, but this one was different. There was an intensity in the air, a feeling that something wanted to be heard. "Is there anyone here?" Sarah's voice quivered as she spoke. She extended her hand, placing it on an old wooden planchette. She waited, her breath held. And then it happened. The planchette moved, slowly at first, then with purpose, spelling out letters that formed a name, Thomas. A name from the past, a name with a story to tell. As the séance continued, the room grew colder, and an ethereal presence seemed to surround her. Sarah, initially a skeptic, now felt an undeniable connection to the spirit that had made itself known. She could sense the torment in Thomas, a man who had met a tragic end and now longed for redemption. He had been trapped in Hollow Manor, unable to find peace in the afterlife. Through a series of messages and responses, Sarah learned of Thomas's past. He had been falsely accused of a crime he didn't commit and had perished in the mansion, a victim of his own despair. His spirit had remained trapped, seeking vindication and closure for the injustice that had been done to him. With each revelation, the séance became more intense, and the room seemed to pulse with the energy of both the living and the dead. Sarah couldn't deny the presence of the tormented spirit any longer. As the night wore on, Sarah felt a growing urgency to help Thomas find the redemption he sought. She uncovered hidden diaries within the mansion, shedding light on the events that had transpired so many years ago. With this newfound knowledge, she set out to clear Thomas's name and lay his troubled spirit to rest. It was a journey filled with peril, as malevolent forces within the mansion tried to thwart her efforts. But Sarah was determined to uncover the truth and give Thomas the peace he deserved. In the end, it was a battle of wills, a struggle to reveal the past and break the curse that had held Thomas captive. With unwavering determination, Sarah succeeded, and Thomas's spirit was finally set free. As the first light of dawn broke through the foggy autumn night, Hollow Manor stood silent and still. The weight of centuries of despair and torment had been lifted. Sarah, the once skeptical investigator, had brought closure to a restless soul and discovered that sometimes the most haunting mysteries were those that begged to be solved. The story of the haunting of Hollow Manor serves as a chilling reminder that even the most skeptical minds can be drawn into the enigmatic world of the supernatural, and that redemption is a powerful force that can transcend the boundaries of life and death. Whispers in the walls. The pale glow of a full moon bathed Blackwood House in an eerie, ethereal light, illuminating its Gothic spires and worn, weathered facade. It stood alone, an isolated mansion on the outskirts of town, a place forgotten by time. The wind sighed through the ancient trees that surrounded it, their branches swaying like skeletal fingers in a macabre dance. Rebecca, a writer with a heavy heart and a persistent bout of writer's block, found herself at the gates of Blackwood House. Her need for inspiration was a relentless specter that haunted her every day. She believed that seclusion in the old mansion would help her find the words she so desperately sought. The moment Rebecca crossed the threshold, a heavy weight pressed down on her chest. She realized that solitude could be a double-edged sword, and Blackwood House was the blade. The silence was oppressive, almost suffocating. The air itself seemed to carry the whispers of secrets long buried within the walls. At night, the mansion came alive with shadows that danced in the pale moonlight. They moved in strange, unsettling patterns, as if the very walls themselves had something to say. But it was the voices that Rebecca couldn't ignore, the whispered secrets that tugged at her sanity. She tried to dismiss the voices, convinced they were mere figments of her imagination, a byproduct of her isolation and desperation. But they persisted, growing louder and more insistent with each passing day. It was as though the very house spoke to her, revealing tales of woe, deceit, and despair. The unsettling apparitions soon followed. Faces, twisted in anguish, appeared in the corners of rooms, their mournful eyes pleading for release from an unseen torment. Rebecca could no longer deny the sinister presence that surrounded her. One night, as the moon reached its zenith and the walls seemed to close in, she followed the whispers to the heart of the mansion. There, in a forgotten chamber, she discovered a hidden passage that led to a chamber deep within the house. The chamber was filled with books, ancient volumes filled with the darkest of secrets. Rebecca felt a compulsion to read them, to uncover the stories that had been concealed for so long. As she pored over the pages, the words seemed to leap off the paper, and the voices in her head grew louder, more insistent. She could feel the madness seeping into her very soul. The stories in the books were tales of betrayal, murder, and unrelenting despair. They were the stories of those who had lived and died within the walls of Blackwood House, their voices forever trapped in the pages of those cursed books. The more Rebecca read, the deeper she descended into the dark abyss of the house's history. As the days turned into weeks, Rebecca's appearance grew haggard, her eyes haunted by the things she had witnessed and the words she had read. She had become a prisoner of the mansion, ensnared by the stories that whispered in the walls and the apparitions that lurked in the shadows. The boundary between reality and delusion blurred, and she could no longer discern where the voices ended and her thoughts began. She wrote feverishly, chronicling the tales of the damned, the stories that had consumed her. She hoped that by putting the words on paper, she could exorcise the darkness that had taken hold. But it was a futile effort. The more she wrote, the more the voices encroached on her sanity. She could no longer distinguish herself from the tortured souls that haunted Blackwood House. Her descent into madness was inevitable. One fateful night, as the moon hung heavy in the sky, Rebecca stood on the precipice of the abyss. The voices had grown deafening, their anguish and despair echoing in her mind. She could no longer bear the weight of the stories that had consumed her. In a fit of desperation, she flung open the windows, allowing the cold night air to rush in. The voices, the apparitions, they all seemed to converge upon her. It was as though the very house had come alive, its dark history reaching out to claim her. Rebecca's scream pierced the night as she stepped out onto the ledge, ready to embrace the darkness that had taken hold. In that moment, she became one with the stories that whispered in the walls, a part of the tortured history of Blackwood House. And as the moon cast its pale light upon the mansion, it bore witness to the tragic fate of a writer who had sought inspiration but had found only madness. Blackwood House, with its sinister voices and whispered secrets, had claimed another victim, leaving behind a legacy of horror and despair that would linger for generations to come. The story of whispers in the walls serves as a haunting reminder that the power of words, when wielded in the darkest of tales, can echo through the ages, carrying with them the weight of the souls they consume. The Curse of the Van Derloch Mansion. It was a dark and stormy night when David, a skilled architect, stood before the looming and ominous Van Derloch Mansion. The mansion was anything but welcoming, its twisted spires and weathered stones casting eerie shadows in the dim moonlight. An air of gloom hung heavily around the estate, as if the very walls whispered of dark secrets and unfulfilled vengeance. David had been hired to renovate this cursed mansion, an opportunity that promised both riches and prestige. But as he stepped through the creaking doors, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just crossed into a realm of despair and malice. The mansion's interior was equally foreboding, with grand halls and cavernous rooms that had once witnessed both opulence and tragedy. Dust-covered chandeliers dangled precariously from the ceiling, and portraits of Van Derloch ancestors adorned the walls, their eyes seemingly following David's every move. As the days turned into weeks, David immersed himself in the restoration project. He drew up meticulous blueprints to breathe new life into the decaying mansion, determined to erase the years of neglect and decay. However, the malevolence that clung to the mansion refused to be forgotten. One evening, as David toiled in his study, he laid out his blueprints on the grand oak desk. He stepped away for a moment, only to return to find them missing. Panic surged through him as he searched frantically, but the blueprints had vanished without a trace. Desperation gnawed at David as he reconstructed the lost designs from memory. But his work was plagued by inexplicable delays and obstacles. The once promising project became a labyrinth of frustration, and David could no longer deny the mansion's cursed legacy. It was during one restless night, as a violent storm raged outside, that David first encountered the malevolent spirit of Lady Alois van Derloch. She materialized before him, her ghostly form swathed in a tattered gown and her eyes filled with torment. "Why have you come to defile my home?" she whispered, her voice carrying an otherworldly chill. David, shaken to the core, stammered, "I was hired to restore this place, to bring it back to its former glory." Lady Alois's spectral form contorted with anger, her vengeful desires palpable in the air. "You do not understand the curse that binds this estate," she hissed. "None shall leave until my demands are met." David's heart raced as he listened to Lady Alois's chilling tale. She spoke of betrayal and treachery, of a past marred by greed and deception. The mansion, once a symbol of her family's prosperity, had become her eternal prison, and she sought vengeance against those who had wronged her. With each passing day, Lady Alois's presence grew more oppressive. She appeared at unexpected moments, her eyes filled with accusing despair. David was tormented by her relentless pursuit, the weight of her curse suffocating his every breath. Despite his skepticism, David had no choice but to confront the malevolent spirit head-on. He delved into the mansion's history, unearthing old journals and letters that revealed the dark deeds of Lady Alois's past. He began to understand the price of greed, the depths to which people would sink for wealth and power. In his search for a solution, David uncovered a long-forgotten promise, a pact made between Lady Alois and her betrayers. It was a promise of restitution, of recompense for the wrongs that had been done to her. With newfound determination, David set out to fulfill the pact, to right the ancient wrongs that had ensnared Lady Alois's spirit. It was a perilous journey filled with uncertainty, as malevolent forces within the mansion sought to thwart his efforts. As the final pieces of the pact fell into place, Lady Alois's ghostly form underwent a transformation. Her eyes, once filled with anguish, now held a glimmer of peace. The curse that had bound her for centuries began to lift, and with a final, mournful sigh, she was freed from the mansion's eternal grasp. David watched as Lady Alois's spirit dissolved into the ethereal night. Her curse vanquished at last, the mansion, once shrouded in darkness, now seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The malevolence that had haunted the estate for centuries had finally been laid to rest. The curse of the Van Derloch mansion serves as a haunting reminder that the sins of the past have a way of reaching into the present, and that sometimes the only path to redemption is through the fulfillment of long-forgotten promises. It is a tale of vengeance and release, of curses broken and the cost of greed. The Portrait of Despair. The grim Chambers estate stood isolated and brooding, shrouded in the relentless roar of a thunderstorm. Its aged stone walls and decrepit spires seemed to reach out from another era, a time of secrets and obsession. Within these haunted walls resided a portrait, a cursed image that would draw Emily, an art historian, into a world of despair and darkness. Emily had heard the tales of the mysterious portrait of Lady Isabella, a painting that had entranced generations and driven them to madness. As she stood before the looming portrait, she felt an irresistible pull, an almost magnetic force that drew her closer. Lady Isabella's face was a study in vanity, with a beauty so haunting that it seemed to transcend time. Her eyes held an enigmatic allure, and her lips curled in a secretive smile. Emily couldn't tear her gaze away. It was as if the portrait held her soul captive. The storm outside raged on, its thunderous echoes merging with the palpable tension in the room. And then, in the blink of an eye, Emily saw it, a subtle change in Lady Isabella's expression. Her smile transformed into a sinister grin, and her eyes, once beguiling, now seemed to mock Emily's curiosity. A chill ran down Emily's spine as she realized the truth. The portrait was not merely an image, it was a portal to another world, a world where vanity and obsession had festered into something malevolent. She was now bound to the portrait, and it would claim her. With every passing day, Emily's obsession grew. She spent hours studying the portrait, convinced that it held the key to a long-forgotten story. The more she delved into Lady Isabella's life, the more the portrait seemed to change. Her grin grew more sinister, her eyes more mocking. As the storm raged on, Emily's world began to unravel. Apparitions haunted the estate, their mournful presence a reminder of the curse that now gripped her. She saw Lady Isabella's face in her dreams, her laughter echoing through her mind. Emily's friends and family became alarmed at her descent into madness. She had become a recluse, lost in her obsession with the cursed portrait, but she couldn't break free, as if some unseen force held her captive. One fateful night, as the storm reached its peak, Emily felt a presence in the room. She turned to see Lady Isabella herself, her ghostly form emerging from the portrait. Her eyes held a malevolence that struck terror into Emily's heart. "You sought to uncover my secrets," Lady Isabella hissed, her voice carrying an otherworldly chill. "Now you shall share in my fate." Emily tried to flee, but the room seemed to close in around her. She was trapped, ensnared by the very portrait that had lured her in. The storm outside raged in symphony with the darkness that now consumed her. Lady Isabella's ghostly form circled Emily, taunting her with visions of the vanity and obsession that had led to her own doom. It was a chilling revelation, a glimpse into a world where beauty had been twisted into a grotesque curse. Desperation gripped Emily as Lady Isabella's ghostly hands closed around her throat. It was then that Emily understood the price of her obsession, the danger of seeking to uncover the secrets of the cursed portrait. As the thunderstorm raged outside, Lady Isabella claimed Emily's soul, adding it to the collection of those who had fallen victim to the portrait's sinister allure. The storm outside slowly subsided, leaving only the echo of Emily's despair behind. The portrait of despair serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of obsession and the allure of the enigmatic. It is a tale of vanity turned to grotesque horror, of a portrait that holds the power to ensnare the soul, and of the price one pays for delving too deeply into the mysteries of the past. Shadows in the Silvertop Manor. Silvertop Manor stood in eerie silence on a moonless night, shrouded in a thick mist that seemed to cling to its weathered stones. James, a skeptical historian with a penchant for debunking legends, had arrived at the mansion with an air of indifference. The stories that surrounded Silvertop Manor were tales of haunting and darkness, but James dismissed them as mere superstition. The mansion's facade was imposing, its grandeur long faded, and the windows were obscured by an unsettling gloom. But as James crossed the threshold, he couldn't help but feel a chill that seemed to seep into his very bones. Inside, the mansion was a labyrinth of shadowed corridors and decaying elegance. Faded portraits of the Silvertop ancestors adorned the walls, their eyes following James's every move, their faces twisted in unsettling expressions. James had come to Silvertop Manor to unravel the mysteries that shrouded its past, to dismiss the legends as mere fiction. He began his investigation with a sense of determination. But as he delved deeper, he couldn't help but notice something peculiar. The shadows in the mansion seemed to move of their own accord. At first, James brushed it off as a trick of the dim lighting, but as he continued his exploration, the phenomenon became undeniable. The shadows shifted and swayed, as if they were living entities, with a sinister intent. The unsettling encounters began soon after. Whispers echoed through the corridors, and the sound of faint footsteps echoed in empty rooms. James's skepticism wavered, but he was determined to find a rational explanation for the phenomena he witnessed. It was during one restless night that the shadows came to life in a horrifying display. As James lay in bed, the room plunged into darkness, and the shadows writhed and twisted. They coalesced into a spectral figure, a shadowy silhouette that seemed to defy the laws of nature. The figure moved with a ghostly grace, its form shifting and elongating as it approached. James's heart raced, and a paralyzing fear gripped him. He tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. The shadowy figure drew near, its eyes, or what passed for them, fixed on James with an unnerving intensity. It reached out with a dark, amorphous hand, and James felt a searing pain as it made contact. It was as though the very essence of his being was being drained away. As quickly as it had appeared, the shadowy figure dissipated, leaving James gasping for breath. He knew then that the legends were not mere superstition, that something malevolent lurked within the walls of Silvertop Manor. With each passing day, the encounters with the shadows grew more frequent and more menacing. James felt as though the very mansion itself had come alive, its dark history reaching out to claim him. He delved into the records and journals of the Silvertop family, uncovering tales of obsession and madness that spanned generations. The horrifying truth of Silvertop Manor began to unravel. The mansion had been a place of dark rituals and unholy pacts, a place where the past and present merged in a twisted dance of malevolence. The shadows that now haunted James were the remnants of those who had fallen victim to the mansion's cursed history. As the moonless nights turned into weeks, James's skepticism had all but evaporated. He knew that he had to confront the terrifying history of Silvertop Manor if he was to escape its clutches. But the shadows were relentless, and the past would not release its grip. It was during a confrontation with the shadowy figure that James uncovered a horrifying truth. The figure spoke of the pain and torment it had endured, a pain that had been passed down through the generations. It was the result of a curse that could only be broken by confronting the past and acknowledging the horrors that had taken place within the mansion's walls. With newfound determination, James delved deeper into the mansion's history, seeking to uncover the source of the curse. He knew that to break the curse, he would have to confront the malevolent forces that had taken root in Silvertop Manor. In a final, chilling revelation, James discovered the truth about the curse that bound the mansion. It was a curse born of obsession and darkness, a curse that had trapped the souls of those who had succumbed to its malevolent allure. The shadows were the remnants of those who had fallen victim to the curse, and they sought release from their eternal torment. With this knowledge, James embarked on a perilous journey to confront the past and break the curse that held Silvertop Manor in its sinister grasp. It was a battle of skepticism against belief, of reason against the supernatural. As the moonless night darkened the mansion, James faced the shadows in a final showdown. The past and present collided in a tumultuous storm of darkness and light. The shadows writhed and contorted, their tortured souls seeking release. With unwavering determination, James confronted the source of the curse, a malevolent force that had fed on the despair and darkness of generations. In a climactic struggle, he managed to break the curse's hold on the mansion, setting free the tortured souls that had been trapped for centuries. As the first light of dawn broke through the shrouded windows, Silvertop Manor stood silent and still. The curse had been lifted, and the shadows that had haunted James were gone, leaving behind a sense of peace and closure. Shadows in the Silvertop Manor serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the past can reach out to claim the present, and that skepticism can be tested when confronted with the supernatural. It is a tale of malevolent shadows, a cursed history, and the power of confronting the darkness that lurks within. The Cursed Heirloom. On a stormy night, with thunder echoing through the walls of Hauntington Mansion, Charlotte found herself at the threshold of her family's ominous past. She had inherited an heirloom, a relic of her lineage, that would thrust her into a world of malevolent spirits and hidden secrets. The mansion, a towering Gothic structure, was a place of faded grandeur, its dark history embedded in every corner. The family's legacy was tainted by tragedy and whispers of dark deeds. Charlotte had always been an outsider in her own family, and she had no desire to be entangled in the web of their unsettling past. But as she held the cursed heirloom in her hands, an ornate locket that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, Charlotte felt a connection that she could not ignore. It was as though the locket held the secrets of her ancestors, and she was drawn to uncover the truth. The storm outside raged on, its relentless fury mirroring the turmoil within the mansion. Charlotte, driven by a sense of duty and curiosity, opened the locket, revealing a faded portrait of a woman she had never seen before. The woman's eyes held a haunting sadness, and her presence seemed to linger in the room. As the days turned into weeks, Charlotte began to experience unsettling phenomena. Shadows moved of their own accord, whispers echoed through the mansion's echoing halls, and the portrait within the locket seemed to come to life, its eyes following her with an accusing gaze. The mansion became a place of dread, and Charlotte's sleep was plagued by nightmares that left her shaken and exhausted. Possession by an entity, an otherworldly force, became a terrifying reality. The entity seemed to inhabit her very being, speaking through her in voices that were not her own. Charlotte, determined to uncover the truth, delved into her family's history. She discovered tales of a cursed heirloom, a locket that had brought tragedy and despair to her ancestors. It was said that the locket held the souls of those who had suffered at the hands of her family. Ancestral revelations came to light, revealing the dark secrets that had haunted the Hauntington lineage for generations. It was a tale of betrayal, greed, and the sacrifice of innocent lives. The entity that possessed Charlotte was the vengeful spirit of a woman who had been wronged by her own family. With every revelation, the entity's grip on Charlotte grew stronger. It seemed to revel in tormenting her, using her as a vessel for its malevolence. Charlotte's family history was a tapestry of guilt and betrayal, and the entity sought retribution for the sins of the past. As the storm outside intensified, Charlotte faced a chilling climax. The entity, now fully in control of her body, confronted her family, accusing them of the atrocities they had committed. The ancestral spirits, bound by the locket's curse, sought justice and retribution. In a climactic struggle, the entity used Charlotte's voice to expose the family's darkest secrets. It was a horrifying revelation, a reckoning that forced her family to confront the guilt that had been passed down through the generations. The storm outside reached its zenith, and the mansion seemed to tremble with the weight of its dark history. As the truth was laid bare, the entity's grip on Charlotte began to wane, and her family was forced to accept the burden of their guilt. In the end, as the storm subsided and the mansion stood in eerie silence, the entity was released from its tormented existence, and the locket's curse was broken. Charlotte, no longer possessed by the vengeful spirit, was left to confront the tragic legacy of her family. The cursed heirloom serves as a haunting reminder that the sins of the past can reach out to claim the present, and that the burden of family history can be a heavy one to bear. It is a tale of ancestral guilt, a cursed heirloom, and the power of confronting the darkness that lurks within one's lineage. The Séance in Rosewood House. Rosewood House, a Gothic mansion of formidable grandeur, stood in eerie silence on a moonless night. Its towering spires and ivy-covered walls seemed to loom over the landscape like a sentinel of the past. The mansion had long been rumored to be haunted, its dark history filled with tales of restless spirits and unsolved mysteries. Sarah, a psychic medium with a unique connection to the spirit world, had been drawn to Rosewood House by a powerful force. She had heard the whispers of the mansion's malevolent apparitions, and her curiosity had led her to the doorstep of this foreboding estate. She was determined to uncover the secrets that lingered within, to help the tormented souls find peace. The night was still, the air heavy with a sense of foreboding, as Sarah prepared for the séance. The mansion's interior was shrouded in darkness, save for the flickering candles that cast dancing shadows on the walls. The room was filled with an otherworldly chill, as if the spirits that resided within were already aware of her presence. Sarah's connection to the spirit world was both a gift and a curse, and she knew that the séance she was about to perform would be unlike any she had experienced before. As she lit the candles and arranged the room, she could feel the restless energy of the spirits, their malevolence palpable in the air. The séance began, and Sarah reached out to the spirits with a sense of trepidation. Her voice, soft and ethereal, echoed through the room as she called upon the souls that lingered in the darkness. As she spoke, the candles flickered erratically, their flames dancing in response to the supernatural presence. The room seemed to come alive as the spirits made their presence known. Malevolent apparitions materialized, their ghastly forms twisting and contorting in the dim light. They moaned and wailed, their voices a chorus of despair that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. The spirits were vengeful, their anger and torment pouring forth in a torrent of emotions. They accused Sarah of meddling in their affairs, of disturbing the peace they had sought in death. It was a race against time, as the malevolent apparitions threatened to overwhelm her. With unwavering determination, Sarah delved into the spirits' tormented past, seeking to uncover the secrets that bound them to Rosewood House. It was a harrowing journey through the darkness of their histories, a descent into the depths of their pain and suffering. As the séance continued, the spirits revealed a tale of betrayal, greed, and unspeakable acts. The mansion had been a place of darkness, where the living had conspired against the dead, and the restless souls had been trapped in a cycle of anguish and despair. Sarah's connection to the spirit world allowed her to communicate with the tormented souls, to offer them solace and understanding. She sought to bridge the gap between the living and the dead, to help the spirits find release from their eternal torment. But the malevolent apparitions were not easily appeased. They lashed out with a ferocity that was both terrifying and relentless, their spectral forms contorting with rage. It was a battle of wills, as Sarah struggled to maintain her connection to the spirits. As the séance reached its climax, Sarah confronted the source of the spirits' torment. It was a malevolent force that had held them captive, a dark entity that fed on their suffering. With every revelation, the entity's power waned, and the spirit's torment began to subside. In a final, chilling confrontation, Sarah faced the malevolent entity, using her unique connection to the spirit world to challenge its authority. It was a battle of light against darkness, of compassion against cruelty. As the moonless night outside the mansion gave way to the first rays of dawn, the malevolent entity was vanquished, and the malevolent apparitions were finally at peace. Rosewood House stood in eerie silence, its haunted history finally laid to rest. The séance in Rosewood House serves as a haunting reminder of the power of communication with the spirit world, and the importance of offering solace to restless souls. It is a tale of vengeful spirits, a cursed mansion, and the battle between the living and the dead. The Labyrinthine Secrets of Grimshaw Manor. Grimshaw Manor, a sprawling, maze-like mansion, stood as a foreboding monolith on a foggy night. Its ivy-covered walls and Gothic spires seemed to stretch into infinity, and its history was shrouded in darkness. Michael, an urban explorer with a taste for the macabre, had ventured into the heart of the Labyrinthine Manor seeking thrills. But little did he know that he was about to become lost in a maze of malevolent spirits and deadly traps. The night was cloaked in an eerie fog, the mansion's silhouette obscured by the mist that clung to its stones. Michael's flashlight cast long, wavering shadows as he ventured deeper into Grimshaw Manor, his heart racing with excitement. He had heard the tales of the mansion's sinister past, of the secrets that lay hidden within its walls, and he was determined to uncover them. The interior of the mansion was a disorienting labyrinth of hallways, rooms, and staircases that seemed to lead to nowhere. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and Michael's footsteps echoed in the oppressive silence. He was alone in this house of horrors, or so he thought. As Michael delved deeper into the mansion, he began to sense an unsettling presence, as though he were being watched by unseen eyes. Whispers echoed through the hallways, and the temperature seemed to drop with each step. Grimshaw Manor was not the abandoned relic he had assumed it to be. It was during his exploration that Michael encountered the first supernatural obstacle. A door that had been locked from the outside slammed shut behind him, trapping him in a small, dimly lit room. Panic surged through him as he struggled to open the door, but it seemed to be held fast by an unseen force. With mounting dread, Michael realized that he was not alone in the room. Apparitions materialized from the shadows, their ghostly forms taking shape with an air of malevolence. They moaned and wailed, their voices a chorus of despair that sent shivers down his spine. The apparitions seemed to be trapped in a never-ending cycle of torment, their faces twisted in anguish. They accused Michael of trespassing on their domain, of disturbing the peace they had sought in death. The air grew colder, and the walls of the room seemed to close in, suffocating him. Desperation gripped Michael as he sought a way to escape the malevolent spirits that had imprisoned him. He could feel their icy fingers closing around him, their ethereal presence weighing him down. It was a fight for survival, a battle against forces beyond his comprehension. With every passing minute, the mansion revealed its sinister secrets. Trapped in its maze-like interior, Michael encountered deadly traps and supernatural obstacles at every turn. The malevolent spirits seemed to relish in his suffering, their spectral forms haunting his every move. It was a claustrophobic nightmare, a perilous journey through a house of horrors that showed no mercy. Michael's hubris, his belief that he could conquer the secrets of Grimshaw Manor, had led him into a living nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. As he delved deeper into the mansion's mysteries, Michael uncovered a tale of arrogance and betrayal that had led to the mansion's curse. The malevolent spirits were the remnants of those who had suffered at the hands of a cruel and power-hungry master. Their torment had become a part of the mansion's very essence, and they sought retribution for the sins of the past. With every revelation, the malevolent spirits grew more powerful, their grip on Michael's soul more suffocating. It was a race against time, as he struggled to find a way out of the Labyrinthine Manor and break free from the curse that bound him to its malevolent secrets. In a final, chilling confrontation, Michael faced the malevolent entity that held the mansion in its thrall. It was a battle of wills, a test of his courage and determination. With every ounce of strength he could muster, he challenged the entity's authority and sought to free himself from its malevolent grasp. As the fog outside began to lift and the first rays of dawn broke through the mansion's windows, the malevolent entity was vanquished, and the malevolent spirits were finally at peace. Grimshaw Manor stood in eerie silence, its cursed history laid to rest. The Labyrinthine Secrets of Grimshaw Manor serves as a haunting reminder of the consequences of arrogance and the perils of hubris. It is a tale of a house of horrors, a malevolent curse, and the battle for survival in the face of supernatural forces beyond one's control. The haunting melody of Ravenscroft House. Ravenscroft House, a sinister mansion shrouded in secrets, stood sentinel on a mournful rainy evening. Its foreboding presence was accentuated by the relentless downpour that seemed to weep for the tragedies that had befallen the house. Amelia, a gifted musician, had come to Ravenscroft House in search of inspiration, but little did she know that she would become entangled in a haunting melody that threatened her sanity and her soul. The rain outside was a mournful lament, its melancholic rhythm echoing the house's tragic history. Amelia had always been drawn to the macabre and the mysterious, and she hoped that Ravenscroft House would offer her the inspiration she sought. She had heard the rumors of a cursed piano that resided within, and her curiosity had led her to the mansion's ominous doors. The interior of the mansion was a labyrinth of shadows and echoes, its grandeur long faded, and its atmosphere weighed down by a sense of foreboding. Amelia's footsteps on the creaking wooden floorboards seemed to reverberate through the silence, and she felt as though the house itself was listening. It was in the heart of the mansion that she discovered the cursed piano. The instrument was a grand masterpiece, its keys covered in an intricate pattern of roses and thorns, and its presence seemed to demand attention. As she brushed her fingers over the keys, a haunting melody emerged, as if the piano itself was reaching out to her. The music was ethereal, its notes filled with longing and sorrow. Amelia was captivated by the melody, and her fingers danced across the keys in response. It was as though the piano was guiding her, urging her to play. The notes flowed from her with an otherworldly ease, and she felt as though she were part of something greater, something beyond her comprehension. But as the melody continued, it began to take on a sinister quality. The notes grew darker, and the music became a mournful dirge that echoed through the mansion. Amelia's fingers, no longer under her control, continued to play, and she felt as though she were being pulled deeper into the haunting melody. The house seemed to come alive with the music. Shadows danced on the walls, and a chill filled the air. Amelia was no longer alone in the room. Spectral figures materialized, their ethereal forms swaying to the haunting melody. They seemed to be trapped in a never-ending dance, their faces twisted in sorrow. Amelia's voice joined the haunting melody, her soprano notes intertwining with an unseen presence. It was as though the mansion itself was singing, its mournful voice echoing through the room. The spectral figures reached out to her, their touch as cold as death. As the sinister crescendo of the music reached its peak, Amelia's world began to unravel. She was no longer in control of her own body, and the piano seemed to possess her. The notes became a cacophony of despair, and the spectral figures closed in, their faces contorted in agony. Amelia's sanity hung by a thread as she fought to break free from the melody's grip. She knew that she had become entangled in something beyond her understanding, something that threatened to consume her. The price of her talent was a heavy one, and she realized that she had ventured too far into the darkness of Ravenscroft House. With every note, Amelia's connection to the music grew stronger, and the spectral figures seemed to feed on her soul. The room itself began to change, its walls closing in, its darkness becoming suffocating. In a final, desperate act, Amelia's fingers struck a dissonant chord, breaking the melody's hold on her. The spectral figures recoiled, their wails of anguish echoing through the room. The cursed piano seemed to lose its power, and the haunting melody began to fade. Amelia stumbled away from the piano, gasping for breath. The room had returned to its eerie silence, and the spectral figures had vanished. The cursed melody had been silenced, but the price of its enchantment was etched on her soul. As she left Ravenscroft House, Amelia carried with her the haunting melody that had bound her to the mansion. The rain had subsided, and the mournful evening had given way to the first light of dawn. She knew that she would never be the same, that the melody would always be a part of her, a reminder of the power of music and the consequences of her ambition. The haunting melody of Ravenscroft House serves as a melancholic reminder of the price of talent and the allure of the mysterious. It is a tale of a cursed piano, a haunting melody, and the battle for one's soul in the face of supernatural forces beyond one's control. The Dark Pact of Hallowgate Manor. Hallowgate Manor, a brooding mansion, stood like a sentinel of darkness on a moonlit night. Its imposing silhouette seemed to devour the moon's feeble light, and the mansion exuded an air of malevolence that hung heavy in the air. It was within these ominous walls that Richard, a desperate man seeking salvation, would unknowingly bind himself to a sinister entity in a treacherous pact. The moon cast an eerie glow on the mansion's facade as Richard approached its foreboding entrance. His life had been a series of misfortunes, a relentless torrent of despair that had left him with no hope. Hallowgate Manor had a reputation for harboring secrets and offering deals to those in need, and Richard had heard the whispers that promised salvation within its walls. The mansion's interior was a labyrinth of shadows and secrets, its grandeur now faded and its atmosphere suffocating. The air was heavy with anticipation, as though the very walls of the mansion were aware of the desperate souls that sought refuge within. Richard's footsteps echoed through the silence as he ventured deeper into the heart of Hallowgate Manor. In the heart of the mansion, Richard discovered a room that seemed untouched by time. In its center, a dimly lit table held a series of arcane objects, each more enigmatic than the last. The room exuded an aura of malevolence, and Richard felt an unseen presence watching him from the shadows. It was then that he heard the voice, a sinister whisper that seemed to come from all directions. The voice offered him salvation, a way out of his endless cycle of despair. The entity within the mansion claimed it could grant him his deepest desires, but at a price. Richard, driven by desperation and the allure of a way out, agreed to the sinister pact. As the pact was sealed, the mansion itself seemed to come alive. Shadows danced on the walls, and the air grew cold. The entity that had offered Richard a deal materialized before him, its presence a chilling revelation. It was a being of darkness and deceit, its form shifting and contorting in the dim light. The entity revealed the consequences of the pact, a series of escalating horrors that would test Richard's resolve. It would demand sacrifices, both physical and spiritual, and as the moon outside waned, the horrors within the mansion grew. The first test of the pact was a malevolent force that haunted Richard's dreams. Night after night, he was tormented by visions of his darkest fears, his past sins, and the inevitable price he would have to pay. Sleep became a torturous ordeal, and the mansion's corridors seemed to twist and change, as though the very walls were conspiring against him. The second test was a physical one, as the mansion's architecture shifted to create treacherous obstacles that sought to harm Richard. Staircases led to nowhere, doors slammed shut on their own, and hallways seemed to stretch into infinity. It was a relentless assault on his sanity, a test of his determination to fulfill the pact. As the horrors escalated, the mansion itself became a malevolent entity, its walls closing in on Richard, its rooms changing and shifting to trap him. The entity reveled in his suffering, its sinister laughter echoing through the mansion. Richard was no longer in control of his own destiny. He was a pawn in a game of malevolence and despair. The reckoning of the pact came in a final, chilling confrontation with the entity. It demanded a sacrifice that would be the ultimate test of Richard's desperation. He was faced with a choice that would determine his fate, a choice between his own soul and the salvation he had sought. In a climactic struggle, Richard confronted the entity, using every ounce of his strength to break free from the pact's hold. It was a battle of wills, a test of his resolve in the face of supernatural forces beyond his comprehension. As the moon outside began to wane, the entity was vanquished, and Hallowgate Manor returned to its eerie silence. Richard, battered and broken, was left to confront the consequences of the forbidden deal he had made. The dark pact of Hallowgate Manor serves as a chilling reminder of the consequences of desperation and the allure of forbidden deals. It is a tale of a sinister entity, a treacherous pact, and the battle for one's soul in the face of malevolent forces beyond one's control.